Hello, everybody. It's Michael Hollands once again for Sound of the Movies. Today I have the pleasure to be joined by Jeff Cardoni. On this episode, we will discuss the beginnings of his career and also cover recent projects such as Disney's Turner and Hooch and Heels, which is now available on Stars Play. It is my pleasure to welcome Jeff Cardoni.
Hey there. Thanks, Michael.
It's great to have you on my show. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your schedule. I really appreciate that. Jeff, at first I would like to know about your journey to LA and the days you performed in bands such as the Alien Crime Syndicates. If you go back in time, what can you tell me about those days?
I think I have a similar story to a lot of people is that we originally wanted to be in a band and that's how it started for me. I was forced to play piano at a young age, played all through my teens, did recitals and all that stuff. But during that time, I made a deal with my parents that I would keep taking piano if I could get a drum set. So I got drums in high school and started playing in some rock bands. And then when I got to college, I became obsessed with the guitar. So I just, really spent a lot of time in bands playing guitar through my 20s. And yeah, I eventually played with that band called Alien Crime Syndicate. They were signed at the time, and I was kind of a hired gun lead guitar player. That happened right when I got to LA. And then, at that same time, I had done a couple, our band's manager was a music supervisor. So I kind of got introduced to the world of film music indirectly that way. So I guess that's where I decided that's kind of what I wanted to pursue. So I gave up the band thing, decided I want to be a composer, took some classes at UCLA, orchestration and things like that. And then just kind of hit the ground running, trying to figure out how to make a go of it. 20 years later, here I am.
Jeff, as I understand, and if I am informed correctly, before you had your big break, you also worked as a songwriter and you wrote multiple songs, which also ended up in series and shows such as MTV's Pimp My Ride and also Mad TV. Is that right?
I did. That's funny. That's old stuff. Yeah, when you're starting out in this business, you kind of do everything and anything to try to, get some kind of break. So yeah, I had recorded songs. I had some friends who were music supervisors back in the day. So I would sometimes get to write some songs for some films. I did a song. Also, there was a movie called Euro Trip back in like 2003. But through that, I met Jeff Schaefer, who I ended up doing the league for after that. But yeah, it just kind of gives you a way to get in the door, just to kind of have something to talk about. And also, when I got here, I took a temp job at a TV channel called USA Network, and I was like a computer tech, and I would take my demo CDs around and put them on people's desks as I was like walking around helping people. And that's kind of how I met Rick and Bruce, who eventually created Pimp My Ride, and then they asked me to do the theme song for that.
I remember the series. I don't actually remember when it was aired, but I it was a few years ago, that's for sure.
Yeah, man, it was like almost 20 years at this point, I think. Yeah, I think it was like 2002 or 2000, because it felt like right around that time was when I finally started getting a little bit of a few breaks on the composing side. But this happened like right before that.
Okay, really that long ago? I mean, time
Yeah,
flies. Oh my God.
yes, it does.
And as I understand, your big break was CSI. How did you land the gig? How did it finally happen? How did your career take off?
Well, kind of at this time was kind of like I was kind of getting desperate at this point. Stuff wasn't happening, and it's hard to stay in LA when you're not making any money. So I was pretty close to kind of throwing in the towel then. But I had a mutual friend who is a music supervisor. His name's Jason Alexander, and he had an office in Santa Monica. And he told me that there was a studio that opened up right next to his office. So I was like, that's great, but I am broke and I can barely afford my rent, let alone a studio. But I took a little bit of a leap of faith, and I scrounged some money together with cash advances and stuff. And I rented the studio next to his, and I would take the bus every morning from West Hollywood over to there. I had done a couple little bits for him on songs, but then I did a short film that the AD from the original CSI did, and they asked me to score it. So I did that. Didn't think anything of it, but I guess through that I met Danny Cannon, who was an EP on the show, and you know. A few months go by, and then on a Friday night, Jason came over and he said, "Hey, they're going to make a change on CSI Miami. Do you want to take a shot at demoing the episode?" And I was like, "Yeah, right. They're not going to go from Graham Revell to me." But I was like, why not? Of course, I'll do a demo on anything. And I took the weekend, I got the VHS, did the whole episode, just pretty much did whatever I thought because I really didn't know what I was doing. But from what I understand, they watched the demo, they watched the tapes without names on them. And I just got lucky and they picked me. And then they were like, "Who the hell is this guy?" But yeah, that was pretty much how it happened. There were some other things that happened after that because they wanted to do another one of these derbies, which ended up pairing me up with Kevin Kiner for the next episode, which basically changed it all. Then we got the job, and that led to 9 seasons.
Okay, great accomplishments. Congratulations. And Jeff, I think you once described your approach and method as quote unquote old fashioned or old school, theme oriented. I think you even still to this day use notation paper. Is that right?
I do on a lot of it. Yeah, I am hopelessly old fashioned, I guess, in that. Yeah, I like a melody and like to try to have that before you start working on something. So whenever can be, I like to have a piece of paper and sit at the piano in the beginning and try to just hash out some kind of musical nugget that at least I feel like when you have something in your head before you get to the computer and start writing things, it's just so much easier if you kind of have an idea of the raw material before. Because I feel like sometimes, if you just get the picture and then you just sit down at the computer and start writing, I mean, sure, you can write something that sounds fine, but I feel like if you don't have the melodic material, it's really hard to do a whole show without it. I feel like if you have that in your head, it's just much easier to kind of be thinking about ideas and ways to manipulate it. Whereas if you don't have it, you kind of get in this, well, you're doing something that sounds right, but it's not necessarily all tied together melodically. So yeah, I do try to have that down first. Yeah. That being said, CSI Miami was the least melodic show I ever worked on, but
yes.
Since then, very much so. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. But I put the term in quotes because I'm not too fond of the term old school or old fashioned. Because in terms of music, I mean, it doesn't really matter how you get there as long as you have an idea you actually get to flesh out, and I think that's the most important thing. To me, it wouldn't matter if you use, a digital mock-up or if you play it on the piano, as long as you get there, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And the hard thing about that is I think the best way to get there is to have time. There's nothing like getting a cut of a film and then having a couple weeks to kind of just watch it. And you kind of get the sound of what you think you're going to do in your head. Whereas again, if you get it and you have to start writing immediately, I don't think you get that time to, if you get an idea in your head, if you have a tune, if you have a concept, I think that can all kind of fully form in your head without writing a note on the sequencer or on paper or whatever. And if you get to that, I find that the rest of it becomes a lot easier. So that's always the goal.
Yes, great. Thank you. And Jeff, before we talk about Turner and Hooch and also Heels, I would like to just breeze over some other projects which I really enjoyed. One being Training Day, the series. What can you tell me about, let's say, honoring what I feel is one of the best films of the new millennium and also leaving your own mark, and how did you approach it when it was turned into a TV series?
Yeah, that was hard because I had seen the original movie countless times. I mean, it's a classic, you know.
Yeah.
So that was, that was one of the original questions, was how much of the original score are we going to use or not use? And the marching orders I got were, this is different. So we kind of have to do our own thing. I mean, I think subliminally, I kind of had some of the stuff that Mark Mancina did in my head. So hopefully it kind of came out a little bit. But that one came about through Danny Cannon, who I met through CSI. And he was directing the pilot, and he called me in, and it was kind of a pressure cooker. And because on a lot of the Bruckheimer pilots, they sometimes don't use a composer on the pilot, but Danny feels very strongly about using an original score. So that was a battle, and to the point where I had a score created, and there was a temp score created, and up until the final dub, we really didn't know what they were going to use. And I'd be getting texts from the dub, from the music editor, saying, "Oh, they went with your cue here. They went with your cue here. They went with your cue here," which is gratifying, but it's a hard it's a hard process.
Yeah.
But there were some nuggets of melody in the pilot that I used through the whole series. I mean, I just was so excited to work on that, and I knew there was going to be criticism because the movie is such a classic. I mean, it's just one of the great, cop movies of all time. And I'm a huge Denzel fan. And so I knew no matter what we did, there was going to be some pushback. But thank God, Bill Paxton, I mean, was just the heart and soul of that. And it was,
Yes.
I mean, it was so crushing waking up that morning when he passed away. It was just like
Yeah.
that just really hit hard. I mean, because just so many of the movies I had seen as a kid and just as a fan, he was just so awesome. So to be able to work on this thing with him was just a true joy. And he just brought that line of energy, but humor, but just, just what he did was just so cool. And it was such a tragedy to lose him during this show.
Wonderful actor. Also directed some good films. Frailty, very good movie. And
Oh yeah, Brian Tyler, great score. Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about that the whole time. Was just like, how lucky am I to get to work on something that he is on and involved in? Because yes, as a director, as a filmmaker, as an actor, he's just beloved. So it wasn't lost on me how lucky I was to have a small part of something he was doing.
very well said. Thank you. Thank you very much, Jeff. And I would like to also mention the Kominsky methods. I'm actually right in the middle of season 3 right now.
Right.
I mean, I loved the first 2 seasons, and then I was like, okay, when is season 3 gonna be released? And then it actually was released, and I didn't get around to watch it. So I have a couple of more episodes to watch, but I think it's a very good series starring Michael Douglas among others, and it's about the acting coach Sandy Kaminsky and his friends and family. And what also strikes me about this series is the, again, quote unquote, let's say, low-key approach. It's at times emotional, at times it's very funny or quirky, again in quotes. And then how do you how do you know when it's appropriate to, let's say, settle for a less is more approach instead of more is more?
I mean, I always gravitate toward less is more. I feel like the more you do this, like sometimes you just see something and I'm like, God, it's got 80 minutes of music and a 78-minute movie. Like sometimes I just feel like when there's too much, it just becomes nothing. I feel like you just kind of tune it out sometimes because it's just going constantly. So I tend to definitely think of a less is more approach, especially when it comes to comedy, because I'm reluctantly do comedies. Like it was never kind of the plan for me. And Silicon Valley kind of changed things where I got called on a lot of comedies. And I tend to, if I have my way, approach a comedy from a non-comedic perspective, And so we tried to do that with Kaminsky, really, look at more of the emotional moments and the heavy moments than the comedic moments, because the dialogue is brilliant as it is, and it doesn't need me to make it funnier. And it was really interesting working with Chuck Lorre on this because he didn't, he comes from a multicam background where they don't have score per se, and it's just bumpers and things like that. So this was his baby, and it was a process trying to educate him and experiment and try things till we kind of got to a point. And at a certain point, I think I won his trust. I mean, it was hard in the beginning. It was definitely hard. But like when it gets to season 3, they would send me cuts with very little music. And I was like, I think we should look at a few of these spots. Just let me try what I think it should be. And he just responded so favorably. It was really creatively satisfying. Whereas, I feel like once you get to the end of season 3, you definitely get the emotional payoff. And I don't want to give anything away, but I think they definitely stuck the landing in a big way. And it's satisfying, especially not having Alan Arkin. I think they really did justice to all the characters, and it was a nice, tight ending. And that one especially, while we were trying to figure out what we were going to do musically, I sat at the piano, and that the main theme, the piano, not necessarily the main title thing, but there's a melody that goes through basically the whole series. That was the first thing I wrote. And when I first played it for him, he didn't get it. But then as it started being woven into a lot of the cues, it's there basically in every cue. It's there in cello, it's there in pizzicato, it's there on piano, it's on bassoon, it's everywhere. So that was really gratifying to kind of just, I think as a composer, a lot of times we forget when someone brings you on something, they want to hear your idea. They want to hear what you would do. They don't want to have you just listen to their temp track and say, okay, I can do that. They want to be surprised. And I think that this was one where it was gratifying to kind of try some things that he wasn't expecting and see them land.
Can't wait to watch more episodes. I think there's only 6 episodes of season 3, right, as opposed to 8. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a short one, but the ending is really good. I mean, there's a lot of sad moments, but it's really good.
It's really, really good, and interesting characters, and also his Michael Douglas's students. They also showed the struggle to a certain degree. Trying to make it as a young actor, the auditioning process. Trying to get an agent, and also the jealousy part when one of the characters lands a part in the series, co-starring alongside Morgan Freeman. And yeah.
Well, that was very full circle for me, because when they first showed me that scene, Chuck's like, I don't know what we do with a scene like this. I'm like, Chuck, I did 200 episodes of CSI. I know what to do. I know what to do with that series. Their take on, they called it Quincy, but it was basically a CBS procedural show. It's like, I know how to do that.
Great. Okay, Jeff, thank you very much for elaborating on that. And now let's dive into Turner and Hooch, which is now available on Disney Plus. It's based on the 1980s film starring Tom Hanks, and it's interesting to know that the new character, the young Scott Turner, basically is Tom Hanks's son. Of course, not a real life son, but the son of Scott Turner. And it was a good idea. I mean, going for a, let's say, continuation of the story and showing his son, as opposed to just doing a spin-off or something like that. So that was really one of the positive aspects right off the bat.
Yeah, it was an interesting take, because I felt that it didn't just alienate all the people who liked the original movie. It kind of gave it somewhere to go. Because it's tough. Yeah, some of these like shot for shot remakes, I don't understand them a lot of times. So I thought this was an interesting way to take it, and which kept, it basically kept the original movie alive through all of these episodes, because there was the constant trying to figure out what happened to his dad, basically. So that was strung through all the episodes, which was cool. So it kind of paid tribute to the original movie, and gave you some new things to check out, but also kept you interested if you liked the original.
Yes, and that's also very important. And I mean, many people of a younger audience, may not even know or remember the original Turner and Hooch because it came out in 1989. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, but of course, there is no limit to exploring older films, even if you were born in, let's say, in the early 2000s. So I encourage every film buff and fan of the 80s to check out also Turner and Hooch. And I think it must have been also challenging to let's say paying homage to something and then also giving it a certain twist and making sure or trying to make sure it also appeals to a younger audience.
Yeah, that was a puzzle to figure out because yeah, the original movie surely wasn't a kids movie.
No.
Um, and this show also got pretty dark on some of the cases and things, but
Yeah.
then 5 seconds later it would be into the dog's antics. So it was definitely a conversation from the beginning. The original movie I felt was spotted very lately with music. There really wasn't very much uh, in like a traditional 80s, John Williams kind of way where it would be really heavily scored. So I think it was, it kind of early on, we figured out that we kind of couldn't use that as a template for this because there was just too much of the kids element to this. So we kind of had to come up with some new material to be able to address all of that. So yeah, and this one ended up having a lot of music.
Yes, there's quite a bit of music in there, and I must say that action isn't necessarily a driving force, but there is action in this series, but it's never really, let's say, on the nose or over the top. So it's very well balanced. You have a, let's say, likable characters, the young Scott and also his family, his sister, and let's say the young lady at the K9 unit. I'm drawing a blank on her name. I think it's Emily.
Right. Emily, yeah.
Emily, yeah.
Yeah, she's great.
Yes, and so there's many aspects which might appeal to, let's say, action fans, and also then the lighthearted, family-oriented comedy. So it covers a lot of ground, and you also covered that musically, and also there's the rock-oriented main title, which I think is very appropriate also for, let's say, the balance of the show.
Yeah, that's funny because that was the original melody was again the first thing I wrote on piano that's in the main titles. But originally I did a way more orchestral kind of spy type main titles. But someone had the idea that it should be more fun and rock and young, so I kind of adapted it into that. And it works. It wasn't the original idea, but again, it was always trying to find this balance. Matt Nix would be, just adamant about the music having to be able to turn on a dime sometimes. Because we played all the stakes real. I tried to not make a joke out of any of that, and sometimes, some of those action scenes were super intense, and then you'd be into a 8-minute action cue and you'd have to kind of take a turn on something funny that the dog would do. So I always tried to minimize those as much as we could to not lose the real stakes, because I think, even though some of these things are for kids, kids are intelligent and they're not stupid and they don't want to be pandered to, or they don't want to have things dumbed down. So I think you can play the things real and the kids appreciate that. So, I mean, I think the longest action cue I ever did, I think I had like a 14-minute cue in one of these episodes. Like, basically once you got past the first 20 minutes and it got into the case, it was always off to the races on the action, which was fun.
Jeff, then I would say let's dive into heels. This time you entered the world of the independent wrestling scene. I was actually told one of the reasons you were approached to do the series is your solo album Nuovo Futuro.
Yeah, well, that didn't hurt. Yeah, as the process was going, I had just finished that, so I kind of sent that as part of my original demo I sent to them, and just turns out it was kind of musically in the same universe that I thought that this series should be, and so it was just kind of just coincidental that it worked out that way.
I think you wrote lots of music and even the main title away from picture. So was it based on the script or a general discussion?
A little of both. Well, yeah, I read that when I was trying to get the job, I got the script for the first episode and read it and loved it. I mean, my dream gig has been to do a sports series or film, so that this was like so right up my alley. So I was like, I had to figure out a way to do it. Anyway, so there's a character in it named Crystal, and so I wrote a demo, and it was called "Crystal Belongs in the Rain," and that was the first track on the demo, and that's eventually what ended up getting me the gig. And um, that just the sound, it was a pretty like atmospheric rock track. It got pretty big. It was very uplifting, kind of not unlike Sigur Rós or some of those bands, just the post rock kind of guitar bands, which I love that stuff. But I always thought that it should be guitar, because I just felt that that's kind of a universal instrument in wrestling, in Americana, in blue collar America. But I didn't think that it should be too Southern. The show's set in Georgia, so it could have easily gone to acoustic guitars and fiddles and played on that aspect. But I just felt like it was more, should just signify the universal trying to get out of the small town, trying to go after your dreams. So anyway, so I wrote that demo. I got the job from that. And that demo ended up being the last cue in the last episode of the whole series. It turned out to be very forward thinking in the name of it. And a lot of the little melodies are in that cue that just are in almost all of the score through the whole thing.
Crystal, she's the valet, right?
She is.
Yeah,
Yes.
the one that gets banned from the locker room all the time.
Yeah, they kind of not belittle her, but in the first few episodes, it's kind of frustrating.
Yeah,
She kind of gets kept in her place, but she's a significant character, and she's got a really cool arc as it goes to the end.
great.
But I did not know that when I named this cue "Crystal Belongs in the Ring." I didn't know where it was going to go. But Mike, the producer's like, you have no idea what this means, but you'll see.
Great.
So it was cool. So again, to my point of like trying to have the raw material before you start writing, COVID hit after this demo was recorded, and I ended up getting hired sometime in the summer, I believe. So they were going off to Georgia, but then production got delayed. So I basically just had months to just write stuff. So I just kind of tried to expand on what I thought the sound should be from that cue in my solo album, what they responded to. And then Mike O'Malley, the showrunner, would every so often just sent me an email. He would be like, living your dreams or perseverance or just like phrases, sometimes like in an office, you'd see those things on the wall with like slogans on them to try to motivate people. So he would just at random times of the day send these slogans. And from that, I would kind of just get a mental picture of what I thought the music was trying to do in the show.
Great.
And then to my, so when they finally started shooting and the editors started cutting it in, to my huge relief, it was working, because I had done a ton of music without seeing a frame of picture. So it could have gone horribly wrong, once,
Yeah.
things can just totally change once you start seeing things. So when I started seeing it and people were like, oh, this is really good. This works. It was a gigantic relief to me, because that could have been the end of it right there if it were all wrong. So that was great. Then I had the confidence to kind of keep doing what I was doing. And it was a great collaboration in that. I worked with the editors a lot. We really had the time to kind of fine tune this stuff and experiment with stuff before you had the pressure of, the studio and the network and sending cuts and getting comments. Because I feel like when people have time to kind of ingest what you do and take it in and kind of understand it a little, they can kind of tell how they're reacting to it better. A lot of times if you're doing a TV show or a movie, you'll have people into your studio and you'll play them your first pass. And immediately you press stop, and then it's like, okay, give me your comments, tell me what's wrong, what didn't work, and it's terrible for them also to have to kind of react that quickly, because I think if you could have heard it and then had a day and then heard it again, then I think you can kind of, give your impressions. So in this way, we had a lot of time where I would send things, it would go in the cuts, producers would see it, network would see it, and they wouldn't be have a gun to their head forced to tell you what was wrong. They can kind of just leisurely take it in and think about it. And so I thought all the comments that came back were from a much more informed place, not such a reactive place. They had time to emotionally kind of take it in. And, if you didn't like something then, there was a reason. It wasn't just, oh, that was different. And also with this show, there was no temp score ever. So everything that was temp was what I wrote. So it was really a great way to do it.
Did you familiarize yourself with the world of pro wrestling, or are you even a fan?
I'm uh I'm not like a super fan. I had surely seen it, and I'd watch it more as a kid, and a lot of my friends were into it. And my sister lived in Florida, so Hulk Hogan lived like a couple blocks away from her. So that was
Really?
like I knew all those people, and in the '80s there were a lot of those characters were just big a part of being a kid in America in the '80s. So it was, I knew all those guys, and we watched it, but I had gotten away from it for a while. But I just knew for me what it signified, and I think sports in general in America, they just, for a lot of people, signify a way out. They signify a way to get out of your miserable existence, and they give you like a view of something better. You can have a dream. If you don't come from a rich place, you don't come from a place of privilege. I feel like sports, whether it be wrestling or football or baseball or whatever, it gives you something as a kid to aspire to a way out, to a better life. And so that, for me, that was the main gist of Heels, was that. It was wrestling in this show. It could have been football or basketball or anything else. I think the message is the same.
I would like to talk about the characters. I mean, the real people as they are depicted in everyday life versus the wrestling characters, the characters on the show, and how to differentiate, how would you describe that process?
Well, I think mainly the music was much more used to score the characters in real life than the wrestling characters per se, because I feel that, I mean, we really didn't score wrestling till I believe the sixth episode. So most of the wrestling was real. Well, it was, and so the characters they all had their theme walk on music, which were really cool. So I think that addressed some of their unique characteristics of each of their characters, where Ace had his walk on, full rock, Ride the Lightning song. And, Bobby Pin had sort of a quirkier one, and Jack had his aggressive one. So I didn't really have to address that as much with the score as far as what they did in their wrestling characters. So it was way more what the family dynamics of what was going on outside of the ring that I think that the score addressed much more. And so for that, in that reason, there was not very much score in a lot of the episodes, which I applaud, because I think that it's a really grounded show, and I feel that it didn't need too much to help it, and it was better to play a lot of those things dry.
I always enjoy a series or a movie which balances, the real people and also the combination of, let's say, everyday life and the sports drama, or the struggle of people trying to make it, or an underdog story, family drama. So I'm very interested in those stories, and I don't think you have to have a strong background in wrestling or in terminology in order to let's say like the series. But the very first one, I think, is called kayfabe. So
Yep.
yeah, I don't think anybody would understand what kayfabe is unless you are, let's say, into the business and
Yeah.
know a little bit of the terminology. So that's really something that I don't think many people would get.
Yeah, and I think they did a good job of kind of spelling that out in the first episode for the
Yes.
people who weren't familiar, without it being too, without dumbing it down too much to the people who were super fans. I think they got it out of the way, and then they can. I think they walked the balance very well of and because Michael Waldron is such a good writer, of explaining what needed to be explained to the people who didn't know, but also you know, not dumbing it down for the people who really know stuff. And I think that he had a lot of little things in there for the people that were super fans that they got that a normal person wouldn't get. So yeah, I think that it was a tightrope and they walked it really well.
And I think there was a quote in which you said Heels is one of your very proud moments. Which aspects, character, or any scene of the show, or in generally speaking, enabled you to reach this level of satisfaction?
I like playing drama and I like playing heart. And I feel like this was just one where all the little melodic fragments, I got to just kind of just go with what I thought it would be, look inside. There was nowhere else to look as far as inspiration or temp music or anything. So I feel like it all came in a bubble. And because of COVID, it was just really getting up every day and thinking about this script and thinking about this and just reacting to that and trying to come up with this body of music that was informed by that and nothing else. And I just felt like it's rare that you get to do that. And, I spent a lot of years as a guitar player. And a lot of times you don't get to do exactly that. I felt like this and my solo album was if I can think of what I do best, this would be it. I like mixing strings with electric guitar. And so for that reason, I felt like this was, right up my alley, and I couldn't be happier to get to do what naturally comes to me on a project and for it to be received the way it was by all the producers and everything, which was great, and it was, there's always going to be critics, and that, that hurts.
Yes.
We got one bad review in Variety where they knocked the music because it felt it was trying to be self-important. My producer, he texted me, he's like, do not listen. We could not be happier. It just shows that you can't please everyone, and I was feeling super proud of this the day before. And the next day I was again, because if you play it safe, then you can never please anyone. You're going to always get someone. So I know when I slept at night that I was proud of what I did and I felt really good and I felt like it helped the show. And I, to the point where, Michael Waldron just called me the other day just saying, I just got a chance to watch this after a few weeks, and I just have to tell you how much of a character the music is. And so that was reassuring, because you get that one sentence from someone you don't know just totally makes you question everything. Is it all wrong? Was it too much? Was it? Yeah. But I'm like, I think I've been doing this long enough where I don't think so. So it was reassuring to hear that.
There's always somebody who disapproves.
Yeah.
I never,
rightfully so.
But I never got that feeling, that the music is trying to be in a Superimport, self-important. No, I don't think it was, intrusive or out of place. I don't think that at all. So maybe the writer was just, trying to, get a reaction or get a.
I think at that point we had 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah, he was literally the only negative.
Yeah, so it doesn't really matter anyway. So yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, but the long story short is it was rewarding to me to take something from a page, write something that you felt that from reading those words, that was my musical manifestation of those words, and to have it work all the way through the end of the series. That's why for me, I felt like it was the most gratifying, and to make it through, network cuts and studio cuts and some of these Zooms where there's 20 people on, and to have someone compliment the music or an exec texting me just about how much that cue meant to them, it was just really felt good, and you don't get that a lot of times. And so, yeah. I'm going to take the victory.
Great. And you also worked with Ben Bridwell on this one, right?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, that was kind of the last piece of the puzzle. So, as we were working on it, every time you get to the main title in the cut, it would just be a 90-second black slate saying main titles that come here. And I was like, I want to do this. I really feel like this show should have a main title that's tied to the rest of the music in the show. At that
Yeah.
point, we had written a ton of music and it was all working and we had this universe. So I felt like it should be that. So I just wrote something and just started slugging it in. When I'd send back my score, I would just put it there, because, they, the truth be told, at that point, they were looking at big artists to do a song there. I think that the head of the network and the studio wanted a big name artist. So I was like, well, I'm going to fight or go down fighting, so I just kept putting in my piece there. And eventually they were like, when they didn't find the song that was totally right for them, they were like, what is this? And I was like, this is me. Which then at that point, they still had the idea of a song. So that led to music supervisor John Leahy saying, what if we, had Jeff collaborate with someone? And so his number one idea was Ben and Band of Horses. He just felt like musically and aesthetically, that would be the best fit. So we did a Zoom and Ben was down. I played him what I did. And then we just had like 3 days of just going back and forth. And then Ben just, he just killed it. He came up with the lyrics. We gave him some phrases and some ideas, but it's all him. He just took it to somewhere way better than it was before. And when I got his final take, it was just magic, just like every hair on your body stands up. You're like, that's it. And we had a deadline of like 11 o'clock at night on Sunday. So I think I got his track at like 9:30. And I had to like mix it in. I had a mastering guy standing by like to master it at like 10:30 so we could make the 11 o'clock deadline and sent it in. And we ended up getting it. So it was great.
Also, this time it's released on a week-to-week basis, so it's a nice contrast to the binge watching trend, which has been going on for quite some time. But of course, if you are really interested in a show and you want to continue, it can be frustrating to wait one more week.
It is. I've been on that with a few shows this year where you're really into it, but I do like having something to look forward to every week. And there are a couple HBO shows recently that we went down this path on.
Right.
And it's good. It's frustrating, but it makes you look forward to Sunday nights and having something to look forward to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so, I know episode 3, CM Punk I know there's a lot of people excited about some of the cameos. So
great. Yeah. Of course, there's more to wrestling than meets the eye. Many people would say, well, how can you watch this fake and phony bullshit? So there is much more to it than, let's say, what people think there is, of course.
Oh, I mean, yeah, that's what all the actors said. It's like, yeah, it's a story, but that doesn't mean it's fake. It's a story in no way, no different than a play, and the physicality is ridiculous, fake or not fake. They are still incredible athletes and
absolutely.
Yeah, and so it's pretty amazing.
Yes, I mean, well, of course, there is this, stereotype. Of course, it's fake and nonsense because the winner or the loser, respectively, are to be predetermined and so on and so forth. But that's not what this is about. It's about the physical storytelling, the drama behind it. Making stuff up as you go along in the ring and just try to deliver a good show. And it's very physical. And people always say, well, or certain people, well, they don't really hurt each other. Well, they are not supposed to hurt each other, on purpose.
Right.
But it's a very physical process. Taking the bumps. It's it just wears you down. It's a predetermined or not. So the physical aspect is just, well, it takes years and years of training and practice. And if you make one false move, you get injured permanently, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, Steven hurt his back on the show. They had to shut down production for a while. I mean, all these actors were doing their own moves. They weren't stunt doubles. I mean, they trained. I mean, it's crazy some of the stuff. Yeah, I mean, because having worked on it, I see all this stuff in slow-mo, and it's like these are actors doing legit wrestling moves. I mean, it's pretty cool. Yeah, I
That
mean, just the choreography and the cinematography and the directing, Pete Siegel is just it's beautiful.
it
They
is.
make it's like a ballet, and it's pretty amazing.
Jeff, is there anything else you would like to add? Anything else on your minds about Heels or about upcoming projects? Anything else that comes to mind before we wrap up today?
No, just I'm really thankful for you taking the time and to know about these things and to know about what we do. And
Absolutely.
it's just this is it's a gift to be able to get up and make music every day. And I'm just fortunate, and I feel like I'm just getting started, and I hope to be able to do it for a lot longer. It's an exciting time.
Jeff, thank you so very much for taking the time out of your schedule. I really appreciate that. I had a great time talking to you, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation as well.
Thank you very much. Have a good day, and I'll talk to you soon.
Let's talk soon. Take care.
Okay.
Bye.